It's the latest I think we've ever redesigned something so core.
I'm a huge fan of Hearthstone. I started playing the game in beta, and now 6 years later, I still check in with it every single day. And I really love covering it for IGN too. The team, they just have this infectious enthusiasm, and they always tell really fascinating stories when I ask about the origins of some of the most iconic cards and mechanics. This story, however, is on a whole other level. This is the tale of Team 5 adding a new class to Hearthstone, the Demon Hunter. Our first visit to Blizzard to see what they were working on was back in August 2019. And by that stage, Demon Hunter had already gone through 16 weeks of initial design and had moved into final design. So what should have happened by that point is that the team had worked out the hero power, the core mechanics, they designed a bunch of cards, and they were moving into refinement and balance and working out archetypes and basically locking everything down. That's not quite how things worked out. But before we get to that, let's go back to the start. I mean, for me as a Hearthstone fan, it's kind of felt like adding a new class has just become this impossible dream. It'll never happen. But here we are. So how did it start and why now?
We've always wanted to do a new class eventually. I think when you launch a game, like the goals that you have, and you have a bunch of new players, and you have these 9 classes, and trying to figure out like all the avenues in which these classes can play at Hearthstone. But I think now our player base is at a point in time where I think they're ready for something new, explore a new class. And I think the deciding factor for us when determining is now the right time is there an avenue to explore that feels unique? And I think for Demon Hunter, like being really based off of like attacking the enemy hero, like is there a space that makes them feel like unique to the other 9 classes? And you know, is the game ready for something like that's going to add a little bit of complexity? And we felt like the time was right. I think 5 years down the road, like we're not a totally brand new game anymore, so we want to try new things and do things that are exciting. Like one of the core philosophies of Hearthstone is surprise and delight. I think like expansion to expansion, it's harder and harder to really surprise people. So I think with the new class is one of those things that a bunch of people on the team are really excited about, and we think the players will be pretty hyped for it.
The time was right then, but what does Demon Hunter bring to the table?
I think the core fantasy of Demon Hunter is somebody who's pretty aggressive and in-your-face fighter. I think, for those people that have, played Illidan or seen him in other games, he jumps around a lot. There's a lot of agility to the way that he moves and the way that he does things. And that's kind of something we wanted to actually build into the character. So part of Demon Hunter's core kit is actually that you're attacking a lot. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're doing tons of damage to the enemy's face. You might be attacking minions and dealing with them in that way. It also kind of builds upon some of the life drain and kind of self-sacrifice elements of Demon Hunters that have traditionally been there. If you're attacking, you're taking damage, but maybe you're life stealing to get some of that back towards yourself. There's also, if you've played World of Warcraft and some of the Warcraft 3 stuff, there's also kind of a more traditionally tanky element of Demon Hunters. And that's kind of where control comes into it in Hearthstone. So, you kind of have this early game deck of this aggressive, kind of attacking style, but you also have this other style of Demon Hunter, which is more control based around big demons and different minions.
And I think it goes without saying that Illidan is one of the seminal characters of World of Warcraft. He's one that everybody really thinks of when they think of who are the top 3 characters that you can think of from World of Warcraft, and people will always name Illidan. It's why he's featured as a minion and certainly one of the characters that you fight in the initial tutorial, but we felt like that would make sense to now make him the head of, or the hero for this new class.
Who shall be next to taste my blades?
So we have Illidan and we have a class that's all about attacking. What should the hero power be? That turned out to be one of the most difficult questions to answer.
Yeah, the process for designing the hero power has been really involved and really iterative. The hero power is probably the most important thing for a class to determine what its playstyle is going to be. It sets the expectations, it sets the bar. What are they like?
His hero power, it's so strong.
We always knew it was probably going to be something damage related. That's just pretty core to what a Demon Hunter is. But how exactly it does that has been very much in flux.
Initial Design's very first pitch was deal 2 damage, take 2 damage, but they wound up being a bit too strong in the early game. So they moved on to the idea of a whole new resource, Fury.
Fury was like, you had like a bar essentially. There was a couple different versions of Fury, but I think the one that I remember the most, the one that we spent the most time with, was your hero power was you give yourself one attack, and by attacking, you would generate something called a Fury. And there's like a special bar beneath the mana crystals that we had a whole bunch of different iterations for that looks really, really cool. To us, it was just these little squares that would have been really cool, you know, had we shipped it eventually. And your deck would be filled with ways to generate Fury, which means just like weapons or giving your hero attack, and then cards that say, spend Fury to do X thing. So it's like if you attacked 4 times over the course of the game, you could have this bar of 4 Fury, and then you could use all your Fury or use some of it to do some powerful thing. That was really
a lot of that was fun.
Yeah, it was really
Like, yeah,
evocative
it was-
to like be able to like generate this special resource because it's like a new class and something new and different.
It definitely felt different.
Yeah.
But Fury had a problem. All the excitement was in the mechanic and not in the cards. And it would also invariably lead to issues down the road. What happens when the designers want to take the class away from Fury to explore completely different directions? The permanent UI addition is going to be a problem. It was too high a cost. So the designers ultimately steered away from Fury. Their next concept was +1 attack this turn and your hero bypasses taunt. Now that sounds exciting in principle, but in actuality, it's not that useful, and playtesters barely ever used it.
We stayed with the ignoring taunt for quite a while, like
Yeah.
3 weeks or something? Something like that? I don't know.
A long time, and we really only switched off like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then we landed a new hero power.
Yeah, and the new one is +1 attack this turn, usable twice. We thought that hits the fantasy of Demon Hunter with their twin blades, but also gameplay. Like the gameplay of that was usually +1 attack, occasionally +2 attack when you want to spend even more on it. And that actually gets used. And so we've been really happy with the gameplay of it. We tried it, and all the initial reactions from the designers were like, oh, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I didn't always use it, but like the option there, having that option to hero power again, even after I'd hero powered once, was pretty interesting.
Now, if you've seen the Demon Hunter announcement, you'll know that Twin Blades is not the final hero power. The team were feeling good about it back in August, but even then there was some confusion. For instance, the first question I asked when they told me about it was, so I can attack twice, right? Turns out I wasn't the only one asking that. Compounding things, the overall power level was just too low, so they stuck with it for a few weeks and then moved on. I caught up with Chad on conference call in December to get an update.
Now we are today at a new hero power. We're pretty well locked in on this one now. It's much simpler. It is Demon Claws. It is just 1 mana, 1 attack this turn. 1 mana is a really big deal. We had initially thought of that and sort of written it off as not a viable hero power because hero powers are always 2 mana. 1 mana for only 1, or for 1 attack is just too good.
But in the end, they figured they'd give it a try, and they really liked it. Its high value per mana was balanced by its low raw total output, and it felt really different and extremely flexible.
Additionally, it does synergize really well with we want to have lots of attack trigger things for Demon Hunter. Being able to trigger those for only 1 mana without the use of needing a weapon as well made all of those cards better and made it way easier to just make different synergy cards to fit that theme of Demon Hunter.
So that's where things landed, right, Chad?
We're still at where it was in December, which is 1 mana, gain +1 attack this turn. We're really happy with how that's turned out. It feels very different. It makes Demon Hunter feel really unique, and that's something that we're really happy with.
Be my shield!
The team had found their hero power, but they'd pushed the boundaries of the schedule to do it.
I mean, we want to have the hero power like locked in by the end of initial design for sure. Like we don't want to redesign the hero power in final design. It's just the same as we don't want to redesign, Galakrond, or we don't want to redesign Death Knights or Quests or whatever the core mechanic is of the set. But certainly by like 12 weeks into final design, we don't want to redesign the hero power, and that's kind of where we were. It's really super late. It's the latest I think we've ever redesigned something so core to what was going on. So that and maybe Death Knights, pretty close.
All the effort was worth it, however, as the final hero power feels great, and alongside the attack synergy cards, it really gives the class the fast and agile feel that the team was shooting for. But what else is going to help make it feel unique? Enter Outcast, a class-specific mechanic. Cards with Outcast get a bonus if they're played as either the leftmost card or rightmost card in hand.
Coming out of the gate, we wanted to make sure that Demon Hunter kind of is in the best place it can be, and therefore having its own kind of mechanic with Outcast, that's something that really defines who it is. It kind of speaks to the agility and the movement of Demon Hunter as well. It's a very literal take on that, I think, but it's proven to be really fun. It changes how the way you think about playing the cards and holding your hand and keeping things back as well, which is kind of, picking the right moment to strike is kind of how we look at that from the Demon Hunter's perspective.
But there's a bigger, broader question for Demon Hunter. What should its class identity be? In other words, what are Demon Hunters really good at and what are their weaknesses? Honing in on that took months and months of iteration. Here's where Dean was at back in August.
I think it's easy to take for granted that you have all this historical knowledge, as people that, especially people that work on balance, are extremely engaged with the game, or playing every single day, or playtesting every single day, the future stuff, and you have all this historical knowledge of how does Hunter play, and how does Warlock play, looking back to Classic and GVG and Old Gods and all these expansions. And when you create a new class, you don't have any of that historical knowledge. You can compare some of their cards to some cards from other classes or neutral, but it's not really the same because you can't envision their package of stuff. Like Rogue, you always have Backstab and SI7 Agent. And we know how this core of cards works together and what it might promote. And we have those general ideas for Demon Hunter, but we don't have the proof. We don't have players have been experimenting with this stuff for 2 years, so we have a really good idea of where we're going. So all that said, we have about 9 weeks left, where a bunch of stuff is going to change, but we're giving ourselves some flex time. So if we have to spend 4 or 5, 6 weeks after that, we'll do it.
Getting a feel for the new class and establishing its identity is also really important in the quest to flesh out viable decks for Demon Hunter. During our first visit, that was still very much a work in progress.
The team have been working a lot on trying to make sure there is a control or a late game strategy for Demon Hunter. We're really confident in the early game, we call it forward facing. That's the term we use for that. So they have a really great aggressive strategy, and it's super fun to play. It's really engaging, and we think players are going to really enjoy that. I think it is just generally harder to make late game strategies more fun. Delaying the game is not always the most fun thing to experience and to be on the other end of. So we're trying to make sure that we find a really fun and interesting way to do kind of Demon Hunter's version of Control.
Yeah, we're trying to find that's actually the part we're focused on right at this moment, is what are the pieces we need to flesh out these other decks to actually work.
Yeah.
By December, things had evolved a bit.
At the time that we talked, we were working on the class pie for Demon Hunters, and that included them being able, since they had weapons, they could control, or weapons and hero attack, they could control the board pretty well, and we thought they shouldn't have AoE. We changed our mind on that. We want them to have a control-y deck, but it's really hard to make a control deck that doesn't have either AoE or significant healing. We want them to have a trickle of healing, but not a major strength. And so control decks were possible but awkward. So we decided that it wasn't going to imbalance them to let them have AoE as well, and so we added a couple AoE cards.
The cards that were added were Chaos Nova and Immolation Aura, while the design on Blade Dance was also tweaked to move away from face damage towards AoE. The changes didn't stop there, however. I playtested a Demon Hunter control deck back in August that revolved around big demons, but it still needed some work. A number of cards were changed to help support that archetype and to ensure that if you could survive the early game and stabilize, you could start to dominate the board. Fast forward to late January, and with the Descent of Dragons meta in mind, the team had just done another pass on Demon Hunter, further refining the class's ability to use AoE and also just honing in on exactly what that big demon archetype would be.
We've tweaked it a little bit. There were a couple cards in particular that acted as enablers for your big demons to get them out early or extra efficiently. And they were sort of too important for that deck in that it made or broke each game based on whether you drew them or not. So we pulled back on the impact of those, and in exchange, just buffed the big demons. So just naturally playing them on their own was much more palatable.
So with the final pieces of the puzzle falling into place and the announcement in sight, I asked Ben and Chad how they were feeling about Demon Hunter.
It's been really fun, and the team did an awesome job. The final team, obviously the initial team did a great job designing the cards, but the final team, they really, iterate, and bring it to kind of a really cohesive package.
I'm really happy with how Demon Hunter is feeling right now. It feels like just one of the classes, but in its own very unique way. It feels really different from the other classes.
The hero that you never thought you'd see.
So Hearthstone has its 10th class. It's been fascinating following the team's progress as they hashed out exactly what Demon Hunter should be, and it's given me a whole new appreciation for just how much work goes into this game and also how important it is to keep iterating until you get it right. For more Hearthstone content, stay on IGN.
And just have fun!